À toutes et à tous d'être présents pour ce...
Thank you for being here today for this workshop. We're going to continue on with our conference cycle that we started this morning. There are 8 roundtables that are organized between this morning and Friday afternoon. This morning we did talk about retreading and all types of economic sides of this, and now we're going to talk about recycling tires to point out what we often forget. In other words, that the tire industry is an exemplary industry. So since 2002, we must remind you that management of waste of tires has been framed by producers. This framework means that for each person in charge of collecting and processing these materials, these tasks are given to a number of eco-organizations so that the industry is right on target for its ecological goals. Now, this virtuous collect fits sorting and also recycling or upcycling to make this industry exemplary. This allows one to reintegrate the product into a new life cycle, and this recycling or this new life cycle is going to take on more importance today with new outcomes, new sources for the future. And also, this in-depth work is correlated with the efforts of each stakeholder, whether they be manufacturers or distributors, to go even further all the time in this approach to involve as many people as possible, professionals and so forth. And then in the long run, to have an approach that's global and as committed and respectful of the environment as possible. To deal with all of these subjects, I'm going to introduce to you people whom you know already, I think. Hervé Domar, who's the General Director of Haulier, and Laurent Proust, who's President of Best Drive France. Thank you, gentlemen. Pick up a mic. They have been disinfected. No problem. Thanks for having accepted our invitation here. Hervé Domar, I'll give you the floor to start. To remind us of one thing, that since last year and a half, since this pandemic that's been circling around us, surrounding us everywhere, has changed things a lot. But nonetheless, the work of the company, of the entity that you represent, Haulier, the work of Haulier has never stopped. You collected tires even when almost all of France was at a standstill. So this means that your industry and tire recycling is a highly structured industry that is solid and can confront all types of conditions, even the most extreme ones. Even the most extreme, I don't know, but yes, you're right. This is a real proof, a pleasant proof of this. Even if we'd like to have proven this through other events that were not pandemics, but anyway. This gives us the possibility of showing how robust or sturdy our industry is, because collection has never stopped. Every day, operators were there on the front to collect tires, and it was interesting to see that even in the real heart of the lockdown, there were even tires being sold from tire outlets. So we were thinking maybe some people are kind of cleaning up their sales outlets, but who knows? We didn't have that much of a drop in our collection volumes during this pandemic, and so really this was thanks to the work of 25 small and very small companies who are our partners, and they act every day to collect tires. And they never close the shutters to their shops. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them very warmly for their great involvement in these difficult times. So you're right. When we talk about collecting tires, can you give us some ideas or figures for understanding this better, what this involves, to see what it represents in France? Some figures. We're going to be very cautious about our figures so we don't scare people off here in the room. 1,000 people in this industry of recycling tires, 1,000 people. not just at Alia Pure. France Recyclage Climatique is the other big entity that manages obligations concerning recycling, especially for automotive builders, and as well individual organizations that work themselves, structured themselves so they could manage their own placing on the market. This is a question for things such as Mobiliat. 500,000 tons of tires, huge figure for every year that these three companies and a few smaller ones collect every year. 500,000 tons. Tons of tires, maybe you don't really imagine what this might be, but Solutrans, we're going to talk about equivalents. It's the equivalent of 9,000 tires, truck tires every year. So it's huge. It's huge. This is very interesting. And this is going to give us a first point concerning the exemplarity of your subsidiary. So Alia Pure has goals, aims. You stick to your aims. You collect the totality of all the volumes that have been planned, but also you go even further than that. It's very important that we emphasize this, meaning there are some tires that kind of are under the radar, but you nonetheless are able to collect them? Yes, there are 2 points to your question here. First of all, big point of satisfaction, and then another thing that upsets us. So the thing that we're satisfied about is that you spoke about the REP subsidiary industry, but you said one thing, and I liked it the way REP means enlarged responsibility of producers, and you called it a framed responsibility of producers. And this is what the ministry thinks as well. So the the tire rep industry in France is the only one that collects every year all of its targeted volumes. Must be emphasized. We must be repeated. Now this sphere is doing very well. Now the point that does upset us is that we are in a system where virtual actors pay for the cheaters, and this is a true problem. Every year we collect 10,000 to 20,000 tons of tires, 10 to 20,000 tons. That's a lot of tires, and they have not contributed. So they have not paid the government tax, and so these tires are not financed. So our 5 stakeholders, who are the 5 tire manufacturers and worldwide, have said that we will collect everything we collect, and then every year, just like last year, they add an additional 3 million euros above and beyond their obligations to pay for the collection of the cheater tires. This is fine and good. I would like to thank them for this effort that they've made. I think everybody should thank them. But nonetheless, they might become impatient in a few years. And so what we want is for the legislation, the regulations that we have helped to set up in our country. We want a little bit of energy and effort to be placed in their being complied with, these regulations. Laurent Prost, you represent a network, and the user, the guy on the ground, using Alia Pure's know-how. Tell us about your role and the backing of such an organization as Alia Pure for your organization, which is Best Drive. This is a key thing to the empowerment of the entire industry and to ensure recyclability of all of these products that have been sold to our consumers. In addition, I was lucky to be there at the very startup of this industry when it began, so I can talk about the great footwork that's been done in the early years. Very complex to set this thing up, and we've seen this, and it's one of the success stories of Alia Pure. They've been able to structure this entire sphere from the collectors, the conveyors, the hauliers, and on through to those who do the traceability of all of this. And today, it's simply done because during a number of years we had a bit complicated processes that were paper-based, and we had to call people and send faxes, and so now it's all digital. We are part I'll come back to this later, but we have our own tools for traceability behind all of this, above and beyond just the tires, because we have other recycling elements, oil, batteries, and so forth. And yes, we are moving more and more towards a single platform that will allow us to have much facility for our sales points or our sales outlets, such as we have with Alia Pure today in this follow-up. So this simplifies the selling point, and this is what we expect. And today we've got really an industry that's doing very well. So the example of Alia Pure and of Tyres and RAP, is this served as an example for other sectors? You were talking about batteries and used oils or lubricants. Can this model be copied and applied elsewhere? Often each industry has structured itself differently on these particular topics. Overall, we did see that there was a structuring via different models, because some of these are more private structures that are going to ensure this collection and is going to be applied to the distributors as well. But the professional side of this industry can really serve as a great example, but the models are a little tiny bit different between these various industries. We're going to go more into the process of recycling with Hervé Doma. First of all, you begin by collecting the tires, by picking them up. This is where it all starts. And tell us about this essential step, please. Yeah. Recycling starts with collection. It's just like rugby starts with the forwards, and, well, a tire recycling starts with the collection. And we must remember this. That's how distribution really plays a big role, because we work well hand in hand. It's a two-part tango, and so the collection has to be very effective. And we need a helping hand at times from the sales outlets where these things are collected as well. So collection. To give you one or two figures, or pickup, we could call it pickup. 150,000 pickup operations every year for Alia Pure. In other words, an ERP with all types of sales outlets that ask us to come collect. There's one request done every 2 minutes to Alia Pure. So every 2 minutes we get a call for a pickup and a sorting. So this pickup today is something that is really well polished, and it's not going to change much in the years to come. So nonetheless, at Alia Pure, you're always trying to go further and perfect things even more. I'm thinking of the solution EasyBox that you developed recently. Easy as easy and box as a box. So you created a kind of solution to facilitate this pickup or this collection. That's a good thing already. That's a big step. EasyBox is a tool that is aimed at improving the work conditions of people who are doing these pickups and collections. So 40% of the tires today are still collected by hand, actually picked up. I'm talking about lighter vehicles. I'm not talking about industrial tires, but nonetheless, a normal car tires. These tires weigh 8 kilos. So can you imagine if an operator is picking up tires, 8 kilos a piece, and there are 200 tires in one of these sales outlets, and they put them in the truck, and once they get back to their premises, they unload the truck 2 or 3 times a day by hand. So these are extremely tough physical conditions for these professions, and there's a lot of musculoskeletal health problems as well. Now, for small sales outlets or distributors, it's impossible for these people to put up a big bin or something. That's why we've set up these small containers that are close to these, like we have empty glass containers to pick up glass. And this allows us to have a quick pickup that takes up very little room on the premises of the distributors and is very low cost as well. So Mr. Post, in your centers as well, is this easy? This type of collection, it's not a problem? No, it's not a problem. This is something that works well, especially for the passenger vehicles. Now, for heavy-duty vehicles or trucks and lorries in our network, that's 50% of our volumes, the tonnage. These are from trucks and lorries. Now, overall, in our profession on our hand, we still have areas for improving. And there are some difficulties as well remaining. So in this industry, we some have leaks from tire structures and that are not well controlled, and sometimes these tires are going to find themselves a little bit everywhere. So this is a big challenge that we have decided to invest on to manage, to have full traceability, 100% traceability of the tires that have been dismantled. And this is always complicated for our technicians because it's easier just to bring this body and then this tire body and then bring it to back into the sales distributor. But we do this using digital stickers on the tires from the dismantling to bring it to haulier pure or to retread. So this is one of the recycling points that is very important before they go to haulier pure for the trucks and lorries. Anyway, so this is a subject we are really going to work more strongly on this year to be as exemplary as possible on it. So this leak, as you call it, what is this? What is this the result of? Lack of control, lack of mastery, lack of verification? Well, the processes that we're implementing today, so there are necessarily additional constraints for our teams compared to what they used to have before. And as well, I think there is not enough verification of certain sectors that do not comply with the rules, don't play according to the rules. Some of these sectors, we've got to say the full truth, some of these are stolen goods or they're counterfeit goods. And sometimes they're sent abroad. It's not huge, but it does exist today. So there have been some articles on this in the press a year or two ago. And I think we've got to be as perfect as possible on this because if we want to be as admired as we are as a network to regulate this portion of things. So after collection, then you go to the sorting process. What is this sorting process step? Sorting process? Well, we sort. Yes, we sort. But also, no, I'm just joking. So the tires that we connect are not all at the end of lifespan. There are tires, about 15% of them that can continue their tire lives. For passenger vehicles, these are tires that are resold as used tire. There is a developing used tire market, including in countries like in France or other countries of Europe, and then also for agricultural or heavy-duty trucks. There's a second life, which is done through retreading or upcycling somehow. So there are inspectors who check each tire that haulier pure collects throughout the year. Each tire is investigated professionally, is examined professionally by a specialist, and they'll say whether this tire still has a lifespan or not. So this inspection phase is done by haulier pure or the subcontractor. It's not done in those centers. No, it's something that is under the responsibility of the companies who ensure the collection. So it's the second point in the supply chain. So this is also important because if you sort a tire properly, you're going to be able to identify properly those who have come to the end of the lifespan and then others. Back to the subject you mentioned this morning, this is the question of retread, because if you've sorted a tire properly, you're perhaps going to be able to use it again. This is crucial. So retread is a real portion of recycling and an exemplary industry. That's why, yes, I wanted to specify for the trucks and lorry side, HGV, part of the sorting is already done by the agency to sort through what can be retread and what will be directly recycled via haulier pure. So we already need to have a good training for our team members so that they will be able to identify what can be retread or not. So you've got this side of things. And as well, the challenges of the industry are not just the retread, but also in terms of increase of lifespan, regrooving, and replacing on wheelbases, etc. And this can give you 25% better yield for these tires. So we're just talking about expanding lifespan of a tire above and beyond what was planned by the initial manufacturer. And then there's also the rebalancing of these tires. This is 18% of a gain that can be made here for tires. So really for trucks and lorries, we've got all of these challenges that are arising, shown by the fact with the backing of the EDM, this industry provides a possibility for energy savings certification or label compared to other operators in the transportation spheres. And here we are assisting our haulier members and partners to show this work that's been done in increasing lifespan of tires. So the more a haulier is going to commit, the more this person is going to implement actions to go far into the life cycle of the tire, and then the more this person is going to receive in terms of payback or bonus. Just briefly about this question of retread. Explain what this would be. What is in the Best Drive offer? Well, we developed a new offer called Retread, all-inclusive retreading. This allows us to offer great simplicity from us to our customers, especially concerning the size choice, the size optioning, because we have our own retread factories in France that are led in Bayeux and in Colmar on our Best Drive scope. This is cold retreading. I'm sure you took about cold retreading this morning. So this allows us to more easily obtain adaptation to different uses, because a lot of transportation, a lot of carriers have a number of activities, not just a single activity as they used to have before. So they collect the tire bodies, and then they can pick up the ones that they want for other portions of their fleet. They can decide which ones are useful for retreading. So some portions are more interesting than others. So this is free access to all of our retread stock in this very simple manner. And also this integrates assistance for the CE certification that then allows these people to have a financial payback or subsidies for the lifespan of the tires for these customers. So, just like the EasyBox solution, your particular all-inclusive solution, well, behind that, you've got a simplification logics. And it just should seem so simple and streamlined. Now, sometimes this is quite different from what some hauliers think. They're going to say it's complicated, but the easier you make it, and instead of choosing the easy solution of buying imported tires, this is going to have a worse environmental footprint. Then it's much better if you can buy retreaded tires in France, and you make savings of 60% on the raw materials. So this will have a concrete impact. So compared to a foreign tire that's traveled thousands of miles to get here, and then just a retread tire, it should be obvious. Yes, it should be obvious, but nonetheless, it's not what we saw in the last few years. But we feel, little by little, last 2-3 years, there's been a real change. It's double-digit growth for retreads that we've had for the last 2 or 3 years. So there is a real awareness of this, and I think what's happening right now is speeding things up, trying to find accessibility to. We've got a very short cycle or short circuit. In 2 weeks, we can get these tires recycled and get them back onto their casings. You know, it's not. It depends on. And also the cost of transportation, the carbon footprint and all that. We're really making savings, great savings here. So I think on this point, once again, we see that there is a new life in this subsidiary and having an impact on the hauliers.
La dernière étape, et elle est très importante.
And the final stage is very important and is gaining importance all the time. That is the valorization and the reuse of tires. Because the products never really leave their circular ecosystem. They have a second life, a third life, a thousandth life in all kinds of different formats. Yes, so what you describe is really the holy grail, the circular economy in the tire world, which would be very suited to our industry. But we're far off from this. Retreading today really is an example of a circular economy because you're reusing a tire a second time, a third time. And with for HGVs, there are projects in France for retreading. And there will also be projects of this kind for light commercial vehicles and light vehicles in general. But what's complicated, what's difficult is to work out what you're going to do with the raw material you'll recover. So today we have to be clear. There are not that many ways of recycling tires. Tires are made out of rubber, textile and steel. Textiles cannot be recycled. We've tried lots of different things, including with clothing recycling specialists, and it's extremely difficult to do, and economically it is unrealistic to reuse the textiles and tires today. The steel side of things is completely circular in terms of recycling. We can reuse rubber, but in a very marginalized way to make new tires. Rubber's made from different uses. After various grinding stages, you can create small balls which are micronized, so the balls are smaller than 1 millimeter in diameter, and these can be re-injected into the tire manufacturing process. But this is a very tiny proportion of what goes into tire manufacturing. So the manufacturers have a lot of R&D capability, so we should trust them to really get to a point where the solution is found. But we need to keep on. We need to think about using tires instead of coal, instead of importing coal. 40 million tons of coal are used each year in France. I'm not talking about other European countries. When you listen to reports from the COP26, reports that state that France no longer uses coal, but it does still use 40 million tons of coal a year. So tires use 32% less, produce 32% less CO2 when used as a fuel. This is something that can be used in cement works, and many cement works have decided to use tires instead of coal to heat their processes. So a significant proportion of the tires that are collected are used as a source of energy, and this will continue to be the case. And only the rubber fraction is used to create different products which use the shock-absorbing properties of the rubber. For example, for tram lines, rails are installed on rubber-based foundations to absorb the shock from when the tram passes over the rails. So rubber is also used, and recycled rubber is also used on artificial athletics tracks, for example. And something which is more closely related to what you do at Best Drive today, recycling is everyone's concern. But at Continental, which is your parent company, there is a great deal of ambition by 2050 to have 100% sustainable process. So what's behind this ambition? So might be biased here, but it's a real change of paradigm. In our group, we call it 4 times 100%, so 100% carbon neutral throughout the value chain, not only in our own plants, but throughout the value chain, 100% zero emissions in terms of mobility and in our plants. So that's something that requires us to work with our stakeholders, our customers, etc. And the third is 100% recycled and recyclable. And the objective here, Continental, isn't just involved in tire manufacturing, it's just 30%. There are other activities we're involved in, including self-driving cars. But as was said earlier, there's a lot of work to do in the tire sector to reach this objective. And the fourth is 100% sustainable partners and suppliers. So on the third point, 100% recycled, one of the possible avenues involves what can happen in partnerships between different business sectors. And the introduction of PET, for example, in tires, which can come from different industries. For example, the plastic bottle sector. And there are potentially other routes which can speed up our development of new solutions. And it's a real paradigm change in our way of designing products from the very start throughout these industrial processes we carry out. And we're on the cusp of huge changes in a number of areas. So on the fourth point that you mentioned, so planning to use only suppliers and partners which are 100% sustainable, that's a strong ambition. That's a real commitment. Yes, it's ambitious, as you say, and that's something that cannot happen by itself. This is something that has to be done in partnership with the stakeholders we work with, and it's something we have launched a accreditation process for, and a certification as a responsible company. So this summer we underwent audits for all the different points of sale which are going to be certified. So this is to gain the status as a sustainable retailer. This is for points of sale. So this is something which is strongly rooted in the different regions and in the different commitments that might be taken by each point of sale. So the first point of sale, which was certified, recycles cigarette butts for use in the tire industry. So that's a small local example which might encourage others to adopt these approaches. So when we were talking about this in December last year, we were pleasantly surprised by the interest shown by our employees to get involved in these types of process. Our entire stand here is eco-responsible. That's part of our approach. So it's something that's an all-encompassing philosophy. So this is not something that was decided from the top up. This is something that our employees are able to get involved with on a daily basis. And this is how points of sale, our partners and our local stakeholders can get involved. Would you say that within the industry, among professionals, there is greater and rising awareness of all these challenges? Oh, yes, clearly. I completely agree with what Laurent just said. Because the environment, sustainable development, recycling, needs to be done in an intelligent way. And it needs to be at the forefront of every stakeholder's approach. And even small operations, like those you mentioned, they are important. What they do is important, and everything is important from the start to the finish of the value chain. And the projects that people are launching in the tire industry are quite revolutionary and will lead us to the tires of the future. In 10 or 20 years, we're not going to have the same. The tires are going to be completely different to the way they are today. So that's one of the commitments, is to take tire technology forward in a sustainable way. So beyond what we've all described, you are also working hard to find a new way of reusing used tires. That's one of your ambitions, that's one of your priorities. Are there different avenues which are emerging, which have emerged, which are going to gain importance and which are still at their early stages now? There are two avenues which are, for us, very important. For example, in public works, construction. So just a quick explanation. We build a lot of roads, we resurface a lot of roads in our country, and we often need materials to make ballast for our roads. Today they are made from clay balls, which requires a raw material to be extracted, or even worse, we use expanded polystyrene to make lightweight ballast. So that's not the best, most environmentally friendly material. So the recycled tires and old tires can be used to, instead of this traditional ballast material. And we work with the Roadworks Union, and we're working with them to use a product which is something which is not a raw material, which is not extracted, which is not something made from fossil fuel. And that's a collateral benefit of reusing and recollecting old tires. And another possible use is pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is a technique that never has really fulfilled its economic model. But one of the positive aspects of the increased rises of energy, increased price of energy, is in pyrolysis. In pyrolysis, we tend to use carbon black, which can then be reused for tire products. And it also produces an oil which can be a source of energy. And its efficiency is not necessarily clear, but it's becoming clearer now. So there are many projects underway to develop these themes. So earlier you talked about those tires that leak. Isn't that something to do with? We're talking about the tires that slip through the net, that cannot be recycled and reused. This is something that has to be resolved in our sector as distributors, as service providers. This is something that we can do when we work at the customer's premises on their tires, and there's a real job at hand to commit all the teams in collecting all tires as much as possible. So teams want to become involved in all the different fields, in all different areas. And that requires them to be exemplary also on the tire side. When we committed on a global scale, if you're going to choose to have your branch certified, that means you have to be also exemplary on our core business. So certification brings about better standards in a whole host of different areas, and we have a lot of work to do on certain topics, but we're on the right road. Thank you very much for contributing to this round table. Thank you to all those who were here to watch it, and thank you to the automotive press for being here. And we will be back here at 4:30. The topic will be the monitoring of tires to improve profitability. Thank you.